I'm
How's everybody?
Good morning. Good, really good. Thank you.
Yay.
Good. It is 9 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Today, what I'd love for you to do is share something that makes you smile that you can perceive with your senses after you introduce yourself. So an example would be the smell of baking cake or the sight of the mountains or what it is that makes you smile. So Donda, I'm going to let you start and call on everyone after I quickly go. So I am Julie Corbett, co-chair of the council, family member and advocate. And what makes me smile is the soft feel of my dog's fur when I'm petting him.
Thank you, Julie. My name is Donda Gorton. I am the administrator for Bhpac and work for OBH. And I think what I love is the smell of the beach when I'm sitting there relaxing. Let's go ahead and let's hit Aaliyah Andrews first.
Aaliyah Andrews, Office of Behavioral Health. I am your recovery TA, and I love the sight of my best friend painting my walls yellow at this very moment. So I will be probably off camera a little bit today, but I am definitely here.
That is awesome. And let's go with Jacob Fry.
Good morning, everybody. Jacob Fry with Sobriety House. And one of my favorite things of all time is the sound of my favorite vinyl as it spins on the turntable Saturday evenings during dinner.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, let's go ahead and go with Margie.
Hi, everyone. Margie Grimsley with the Colorado Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health. And I have to say, we took a risk at our house and our grandkids were over a couple Sundays ago. And what made me smile was playing Old Maid with my two grandsons. And it was just really fun. And we opened all the windows and tried to be as safe as possible, but it was well worth it.
Awesome. Marcella.
Good morning, everybody. What always makes me smile, and I actually do it daily, is my love for my memories. I will often look at photos. I will call my siblings memories, all of my travels when I think about France and Portugal and Israel. And yeah, it's my memories.
Awesome. How about Lloyd?
Morning, everyone. Lloyd Moore, person in long-term recovery. And your membership co-chair. I'm on the recovery committee, and I am going to be along the lines of Jacob. It's my music that is always makes me smile. So especially a warm day and I can point to car like I
Awesome.
did Hearts Club Band album after watching Echo in the Canyon Sunday night. So I had a smile on my face all day long.
That's great. Lorraine.
My name's Lorraine Gilroy. I'm with the Clubhouse Coalition, and I smile when I watch video of Leonard Bernstein conducting Beethoven's Ode to Joy.
That's great. Karen.
Sorry, had to unmute. Hi, I'm Karen Eyrick with Crossroads Turning Points. I think I missed the question. Was it what makes you?
Something that you can perceive with your senses that makes you smile.
Oh, well, I'm with whoever just said that, Lloyd maybe. I love just being out in nature and listening to my favorite pianist, Italian pianist. It just is, that makes me feel free.
Great. How about James?
Morning, everybody. James Gannon, person in active and sustained recovery. I'm a program director and peer supervisor with Advocates for Recovery Colorado. Yeah, I kind of resonate with what Karen just said. I mean, the sights, sounds, and smells of anything in the outdoors, especially this time of season. So fresh snow for me really brings a smile to my face.
How about Lorraine?
Good morning. I'm a person in long-term recovery, Lorraine Hall, and also co-chair of Life Ring Secular Recovery, which is an organization for people of seeking recovery of all faiths and none. And I think just the outdoors, that's the thing. It affects you in all of your senses, really. So there's nothing better.
Agreed. All right, let's go with Ty.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ty Smith. I'm your representative to the can never remember. Sorry, not a very good representative. MHDCJS, and I'm also a peer person with lived experience. I love my little dog, Danny Boy, and I love to cuddle with him.
Great. Ryan.
Good morning, everyone. Ryan Templeton with the Office of Behavioral Health. I represent the Office of Behavioral Health on Bhpac, as well as serve as liaison between Bhpac and OBH. What makes me smile, sitting alone at my house all day long, hearing the garage door open and hearing the two little girls drop their school bags and run to the office to tell me how their day went, no matter if I'm on a meeting or a call or anything, is a nice relief from the work. And yeah, just seeing those lovely little faces every day is fantastic.
Girl dad.
Yeah.
That's right, girl dad.
Let's go ahead and go with Rachel.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rachel Horde, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. What makes me smile is being in the mountains and just surrounded by mountains and smelling the mountain air. I just love it. Or the beach, either one. I'll take either. They both make me smile.
I'm right there with you, Rachel. Natalie.
I lost my mouse. Good morning, everybody. Natalie Brown, Program Manager with Summit Stone Health Partners. I supervise Spirit Crossing Clubhouse in our Peer Specialist program. And let's see, what's making me smile most recently is I just put out fresh bird food in my bird feeders. So hearing the birds and watching them come to visit always makes me smile this time of year.
And Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy King, Development Director for Southeast Health Group in La Junta. I'm on the treatment committee and I'm a family member, and this winter we have been blessed. We live with it on a creek our backyard backs up to a creek, and we've had bald eagles hunting in our backyard. So it's just been thrilling to watch.
That's all right, let's go with Angie. Angie, are you there? All right, we'll come back to Angie. How about Bob?
Good morning. What makes me smile is between two communities as I work towards retirement. So I'm spending more time in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and what really wakes my senses is the sense of smell when I'm there and heading up to the rainforest and all the tropical flowers, and just knowing I'm in a different location and I smell different things. even though I don't have my smile right now since I've had COVID in December. But hopefully that will come back as I continue to spend time in the rainforest. But I'm excited that I'm in a hybrid approach towards my life, which is nearing towards retirement and doing something different other than behavioral health.
Thanks, Bob. And Brian?
Hey everybody, Brian Laney, and something that makes me smile is watching people experience pure joy.
Oh, I love that. Carrie?
Good morning, everybody. I'm from the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. I'm the supervisor of our co-responder unit. What makes me smile are the two girls. I agree with Ryan. No matter what I'm doing, even though it's sometimes a little bit embarrassing, they do come rushing in to greet me, and just the sound of mama definitely makes me happy.
Awesome. Crystal?
Good morning, Crystal Ellis with Sobriety House Treatment Committee. I think what comes to mind for the senses, sense of hearing, also with my daughter, she's 9 and she has a very infectious laugh. She says a lot of funny things, so it makes me smile when I hear her laughing.
Daryl?
Good morning, Daryl Brown, person in recovery. I also am the intake coordinator at Sobriety House and also the co-chair of the recovery committee. And what's really been making me smile now is I get a chance to come downstairs in the morning and have a little coffee, do some prayer and meditation while my wife is still upstairs. And then usually she comes downstairs, and as I see her walking down the stairs, she's got this like huge smile on her face. And that just makes me go, wow, I still do that? Like after all this time, you know, because we've been together for like 16 years and she just radiates. And that just lets me know that I must be still doing something right. So that's what really just gets my day going. And I know that it's going to be a good day. It's really going to be a good day. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Deirdre?
Hi, I'm Deirdre. I'm from the Colorado Office of Employment First. And what makes me smile, yeah, my little daughter. She's so cute. I got to pick her up from school yesterday and she just ran. She almost knocked me over. She ran so fast and it was just really delightful.
That is awesome. Let's go ahead and go with Victoria.
Good morning, Dr. Vicki Sanchez. I'm with the Colorado Springs Fire Department, Community and Public Health Division, and on the treatment committee. I think just watching my children explore the world through their different perspectives is something that most of the time brings a smile to me. Sometimes it's frustrating, but that's parenting. So
I can see that. Katya? I thought you'd get away without it, huh, Katya?
Hi, everyone. I'm Katya Morcacho. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the youth advisor for Healthy Transitions grant. And what makes me smile, I recently moved out. So whenever I go to my mom's house, just like, I don't eat spicy, but when she makes homemade salsas, like it just has this smell that fills the house and like almost the entire neighborhood. So now when I go and visit, like it's nice to smell that and it just makes me happy and it brings me back to my childhood. So yeah.
Awesome. You can bring some of the salsas into the office. We don't mind. And how about Frank? Frank, are you on there?
Yep, I'm here. I just had to find the mute button. Good to hear and see everybody. Frank Cornelia, I'm a former longtime member of the Planning Council. It came off about a year ago, probably, or probably longer. I think what makes me smile is spring training for baseball, and so hearing crack of the bat. Baseball's coming. Things will get better soon.
Definitely. All right. How about Jacob Marion?
Jacob Marion, person in long-term recovery. I also recently moved into a new role at Step Denver, so I'm the program outreach coordinator or manager. So I look forward to maybe getting with some of you guys if you want to come down for a tour or learning more about your programs in the future. What makes me smile is I have to keep finding more and more creative ways to hide my cat's treats. They're only getting more Mission Impossible by the day. So yeah, thanks.
I think they're getting smarter than we are. Angie, are you there now?
Can you hear me?
Well, I can hear you now. That's great.
Okay, I was double muted. I didn't realize I could do that. So I'm Angie Wold. I'm the Director of Operations at Addiction Research and Treatment Services, otherwise known as ART, and I am on the treatment committee. And what makes me smile is my kids are about to start baseball and softball tournaments this weekend. So all the hard work they put in the winter is going to be seen on the field. Hopefully the snow does not stick like they're calling for.
Agreed. All right. Is there anybody I missed? All right. Sounds like it's back to you now, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for sharing something that makes you smile, because you all made me smile. It was just so much fun getting to hear all those wonderful things. So we start, as usual, with our approval of minutes. If somebody can make a motion to approve our minutes from last month, I would appreciate it.
I so move.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Wave.
This is Ty. Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, minutes are approved. Thank you very much. So we decided last month, Bob brought up the importance of talking about equity. So we decided we'd spend the first hour today having you guys share your thoughts with us on that. First, I just want to say, I know sometimes it's a tough subject. So if there's a moment where you need to just kind of walk away and take a breather and come back, you are welcome to do that, no judgment. And our focus in this discussion is talking about inequities in behavioral health in the state of Colorado. So we have kind of a specific focus with it that I know you guys will be able to give good feedback on. And our purpose of doing this is to have the conversation, but also to keep it in mind as then we go into the next hour where we begin formulating our recommendations for the block grant monies and for the one-time monies that Ryan will also share more about with us. So I just wanted to set kind of the foundation, and then I want to just turn it over to you guys to have this discussion, very important discussion that we want to use and keep in mind as we make our recommendations. So thank you, Bob, for the suggestion. Thank you for all of you for participating. Bob, do you want to start? Did we lose Bob? Bob, are you there? Okay, well, who would like to start our conversation on inequities that you see in behavioral health in the state of Colorado? Hi,
I would like to jump in.
Oh, there you are. I was calling on you first, but I lost you. I thought you went on
Yeah,
into
sorry,
retirement for a
I'm
moment.
in between. I'm doing 2 Zoom meetings at once.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So one of the things that I came prepared for, my experience over the past 7 years, I'm on my pandemic year with the commission, is when we started these conversations as BPAC members and as a citizens-based advisory board, what I learned was that there is a significant amount of inequity. When I entered into the room 7 years ago, the stepchild in that room was recovery. And they were the stepchild, oh my gosh, I would say for 5 years, we would work towards trying to figure out what recovery meant and what it meant in Colorado. The other victimized group always felt that mental health got everything in Colorado because they have the institute, they have the infrastructure, they have all these brick and mortar buildings. I mean, they have everything. We didn't even have substance abuse residential until, what, January 1st, and it's very limited and it's very short term. So when you talk about inequities in Colorado's behavioral health system, you need to think about the inequities within the system itself: mental health, substance abuse, and recovery. The second piece to that that's always bothered me in my career was everybody that falls into one of those silos, which means us, our people, the people we serve, our loved ones. So what I thought would be nice for the commission, and kind of something I learned over 7 years that I wanted to depart with, is maybe for a period of time, it's a subcommittee, and the subcommittee is taking a look at all the inequities that we have with the block grant and allocations of resources. And then from there, all of our goals and objectives that we have as subcommittees, from recovery to mental health to treatment to prevention to evaluation, once the commission understands what equality and inequality is when it comes to block grant, systems of care, funding, access to care, and then all of the people in the Rainbow Coalition, I'm a gay guy, to all of our community of color, our tribal communities, people living with mental health, Mountain Tier. So when you take that bundle of people who we are as citizens of Colorado, you break that out in an equitable conversation to make sure that the dollars that we are talking about are being spent where the need is. One of the things also that drives me crazy is we're always talking about mental health wellness. I am not sitting here knocking mental health, recovery, nothing. I'm just presenting a case. We do so much wonderful work for screenings in mental health in Colorado. But in high schools, the number one thing teachers are having problems with is kids that are lit. We don't do screening. We don't do preventative care for kids anymore, or very few high schools choose to take a look at recovery, take a look at substance use. And now Colorado just made an extra $1 billion in pot during the pandemic, and alcohol sales are through the roof. So, and mental health needs are through the roof. So all I'm saying that we need to do, because some systems of care have big lobbyists, they have more people to bring to the table to be forceful with state legislature, and they have more voice. So what I'm trying to say when it comes to that is we need to be equitable as a citizens panel that advises OBH over our block grant funding, and just continue to go through that process. So it's taking me a long time to figure out what I didn't like about this commission and why sometimes I would leave very agitated. And for me, it really resonated finally during the pandemic that it's the inequality conversations that we don't have when it comes to care and dollars. And I've thought about all 7 years of the conversations we've had, even from very early on. We've had very emotional conversations about why should treatment give up treatment dollars for a recovery? We couldn't even get our heads around it back then. So if other trends are coming down the pike, I'd rather us learn from the past where we get defensive over funding, we get defensive over lack of funding, we get defensive over who has and who has not resources. So if we stay in a mode of always looking at what is not equal or what is not adequate or what the inequalities are in all of the systems of care, we won't get into these debates or stalemates. We will always be looking at it as a resource allocation and making sure tribal communities, frontier, mountain, gay, lesbian, trans, we haven't even talked about the trans community very much, that's significantly underserved in Colorado, all the way to our Black Lives Matter movement, to the inequalities when it comes to sentencing and getting access to care for people that are getting sentenced, either through mental health or substance abuse. And that's where their criminal justice, criminogenic situations took place through substance use and abuse with mental health. So if this commission can move towards an equity model, and we even bring in professors from CU and others that specialize in teaching us, because equity and equality doesn't necessarily mean what you think it does in terms of your professional life and working in the field of dollars and allocations. So that would be a gift that I would like to depart with at some point. It's something, you know, I'm committed to work on with everyone through the spring and come back on. But I really feel we as Coloradans have been through a lot with the previous administration, and there's been a lot of demonstrations of people talking about equality, inequality, equity. So these are all things that I think a citizens board should take up and understand what they are, because we've been having these conversations for 7 years. We've just not ever really labeled it and put any traction to how we garnish that. So I leave it open for discussion now. It's something I'm passionate about, but I leave it up to my colleagues.
Thank you, Bob, for really framing it for us very well. I appreciate that. Ty, you had your hand raised, so I want to be sure and call on you next.
Thank you. And I want to apologize for not having my camera on today. I don't feel too well, so I'm not at my computer chair. I kind of want to go in the opposite direction of Bob, and hopefully I don't make things worse. But, you know, as a person with lived experience and many of my friends with disabilities out there, I don't like that, you know, everything relies on a label and a diagnosis and labeling. I've known people, a dear friend of mine committed suicide. She was a huge advocate for youth, and she felt that youth with disabilities, primarily physical disabilities, couldn't get access to the mental health system because of their physical disabilities. I've heard the same thing with substance abuse. When you have dual diagnosis, no one wants to take responsibility. They always want someone else to take the lead, and then the person who needs the help doesn't get the help. And I recently heard a CMS presentation where instead of using labels and disabilities, they're trying to match the need for services to the people that need additional services. And I would love to see a system that goes in that direction, a system that doesn't require providers to have to narrow people into boxes, and you know, a system that doesn't have red flag, warning flags, use diagnoses and other disabilities as ways to rob children of an education because they have higher needs and higher services required of them that the schools can't afford, frankly. You know, just really meet people where they're at, meet the need instead of the label. So that's where I see inequity and problems, is when we have to label people, when we have to put people in check boxes, when our groups have to form diversity instead of subject matter expertise. I worry that people become more of a commodity, and less of you know, less important about what they're really servicing and what they really care about. So I just want to kind of go in the opposite way of Bob. I don't like labels. I don't like that.
So Ty, I'm not talking about labels, and we're actually talking about the exact same thing. So when you're talking about the things that are upsetting to you in the community, it's because of the labels that were created by an inequitable system. So I'm talking at a really high level, and you brought it down to the granular, you know, our community level. We are exactly saying the same thing, Ty. So, and I appreciate you bringing it down for me and like really bottom lining it. It's the labels are part of the inequity in our system that we have to check the box in order for you to qualify or order for you to receive certain services. Certain agencies can't take you, certain agencies can. This was all part of that conversation. So we're actually 100% on the same page. And I completely appreciate you. So the labels are deeper into the conversation when we get into this. So what I'm talking about as an overarch tie is the inequities in the system and what happens. You're actually talking about the actions of an inequitable system and what the system does to people through marginalization, through the intake and the aftercare, and to access to care. So what I'm saying as a commission, and someone asked a question, is BPAC a commission? Yeah, we're all part of a commission. The overarching things that we need to talk about is how to make the system more accessible, more equitable, more consumer driven. Everything you just said, Ty, I would celebrate, and that is the conversation that I am having with you and others today, is how do we do that, but overarching wise, for all 51 of us to make decisions about behavioral health. I hope that makes a little bit more sense.
I heard it kind of differently, that, you know, people weren't receiving the services. So I want to change. I'd like the system to change where you don't need a label. I don't like labels. And it's a concern that we have check boxes. My mom, for the people who know my mom, is really worried that benefits will be tied to vaccinations. And she lives in a small community and they don't want to be vaccinated. So I'll be quiet now, but it's just really concerning that we create these barriers in the system, and they don't service anyone but the payers. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Guy. I appreciate your input. Who would like to jump in?
Julie, I just want to piggyback on all of that because I do think it does come down to how the funding is structured, and that we, in order to be paid for the services provided, we're forced to kind of silo treatment, silo access, and that tends to lead to a lot of these disparities, not to mention the fact that the diagnostic criteria alone can be very gender biased and ethnically biased. You're more likely to have someone who is Caucasian end up in recovery versus end up in jail due to their substance use. And these are things that we have to figure out a way to address on a overarching level. And I'm hopeful that the Behavioral Health Administration will be able to address some of these things and figure out a way for us to be able to provide the treatment and support for anyone who needs it.
Thank you, Victoria. Who would like to jump in? I'm seeing Rachel. Sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, I put in the chat, but I am on the Behavioral Health Task Force, and the work group I'm on is specifically focused on these issues. So just so that everyone knows that that is something that's absolutely being looked at, discussed at that high level, and trying to figure out how to make it better. So hopefully we will achieve that or do the best we can, but just so that everyone on here knows that that's a whole group for the task force. So
thank you. Nancy, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to bring in a little bit of history. I've been here for 25 years in the mental health system, and I started out as a clinician. And I remember when we worked on crisis services and we couldn't screen for substance use, it was strictly mental health. So I would just want to recognize that we've come a long way. We really have. And even though we have a long way to go, and I know that future involves a lot more with peers and peer recovery work, but I just want to say we have come a long way from 20 years ago in terms of getting mental health and substance use treated together, because honestly, who doesn't have co-occurring issues. Most people do. So it just makes sense that we treat them together and we treat them equally.
Thank you, Nancy. Katya, go ahead.
Hi there. I just think we just need to stop making policies and programs without the people we're trying to serve. You know, if it's a program for a young adult, we need to include them in it. If it's a program for Hispanic, Latinx people, we need to include them in it. I think we struggle with making culturally appropriate programs, and you know, having white providers who don't understand their struggle as a minority, as an undocumented person. It's just wrong to think we know better than them.
Thank you. Who would like to share next? Karen.
Yeah, I would like to just kind of piggyback on what Katya said. I think, you know, I've sat on a few committees and in the community around adolescents even, and there's not the input from them. And so I agree, we need to get the input from those experts, if you will, that we're recommending things for. I think that just, I mean, that's across the board. And then at the same time, I also agree with Nancy. I mean, we talk about eliminating the silos between mental health and SUD, but I still hear a lot of language, and obviously we see it in the funding. Those are still very much separate. Even though we talk about making them one, they're just not. So that's my input.
Thank you, Karen. Go ahead, Margie.
Thank you. I have the opportunity and I guess the honor to be part of the Jeffco Communities That Care initiative, and I am so in awe of what they are doing because they are just being so amazingly inclusive of youth and that youth voice. And last Thursday, they had a town hall meeting and had over 100 youth participate. And the two subjects of which they were talking about, and one is regarding substance use, and where do you first get your first drink? Where do you, who buys the alcohol for kids? Why do you, and you know, it's how does it make you feel, and why do you think kids drink? And you know, it's really interesting because you're hearing directly from them. And then on the flip side, another part of the Jeffco connections, of which it's confusing, but Communities That Care is the prevention part of the Jefferson County's collaborative management local governing group. And on the flip side, they also provide funds for the Jeffco JAC, the Juvenile Assessment Center, where kids are coming in at a different end. And I actually even called the director of the JAC yesterday and said, how can we find someplace in the middle to kind of hear what these kids are telling us on the front end that maybe will then help prevent the kids from being in the place they are at the back end? And Bob, going with what you were talking about, it's amazing how some schools really are working hard. I mean, these are high school kids that are the interns for this process. So I think having a subcommittee working on this is phenomenal. I was part of the last COAC System of Care grant, and they had a part of their governance piece was we had someone from the Equity Project that had phenomenal insights and information. My experience is, though, we learn these pieces, but we never take the time to truly implement and figure out what we're learning, where do we take it to the next step? It's just the grant ends or whatever happens, and then we start all over again. So I would hope that we would start learning and lessons learned for what we are doing well, as Nancy said, where we have evolved, but also looking at what pieces of information did we get that we never acted upon, we never learned from. But on the flip side, where these kids and where these things are really happening, how we can learn to learn from them, be inclusive of the work that they're doing and support that so that it can be replicated more broadly. One of the things that Jeffco Communities That Care group does is they actually have youth now that will come out and talk and explain the work that they're doing. That might be something that we would want to invite one of them to come and give that presentation, just to give a concept of how they're working, because suicide is a part of the work that they're doing. And certainly the substance use and how to address that to prevent youth, but to learn from youth directly what is driving them to do what they do.
Thank you, Margie. Victoria.
I think along with all of this is, while I appreciate, well, no, I guess I don't, the marijuana legislature and I understand that it brings in a lot of money to the state. There hasn't been a lot of discussion, especially where it gets down to our young people, about the effects of the levels of THC in our marijuana and chronic usage. We have on a regular basis for my program probably 3 referrals a week for people that are struggling with cyclical vomiting due to their marijuana usage. And a lot of them won't sign consent to work with us because they believe that the marijuana is the only thing that's helping their anxiety or helping this or helping that, or they're struggling with hallucinations due to their chronic usage. And these aren't things that are that seem to be talked about and certainly not educated about, that there is a downside to legalizing marijuana and who it's affecting.
Thank you. Who's next? Anyone have any questions about something someone said or any comments?
Yeah, I do. Bob.
Lorraine?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
Sorry, I just, I heard Bob, I heard you say something about having a citizens board. What does that look like to you? Like, is that gonna be what could solve these issues that you expressed?
So we are it. We're 51% Colorado citizens on this board. This is a citizens driven commission set up. So 51% have to be people living in recovery. And Ryan can describe our bylaws, but we are a citizens-based, consumer-based commission. So it is us to talk about the inequalities. It is us to talk about access to care. It is us to talk about what's not happening in community. This is the place for us to take a look at these inequalities and then to make recommendations on how the block grant can be used for our communities. What we've done what we've been doing is not taking a look at the inequalities. We've been taking a look at kind of what's been kind of offered to us from OBH, kind of what's been offered to us from systems of care, but we've really not empowered our voice. And, you know, to the point where we're talking about how the monies are being spent and where they're not being spent. If you look at the system of care in Colorado, the 3 silos have significant deficits. Mental health being with the most resources and assets. You only just got a substance abuse residential benefit in January, last month. And this is 2021. And then the recovery system is still being built out. So all I'm trying to say back to the team after hearing everyone's concerns and stories and professional experiences is you're all still talking about the inequities of the system and the barriers and access and the labels. So how do you move this commission to an equity-based commission since we are 51% citizens and consumers.
Okay, I understood that the makeup of BPAC, but I thought you were saying we need to start this new group that was going to be something else.
Hey, you know, I don't know where this will lead actually. So I'm hoping it gets started here. And if it does really well, Ryan takes that back to OBH and says, you know, we need a citizens panel advising, you know, OBH and the new administration. You know, many departments at the state do have citizen panels and executive boards. So, you know, I'd say we get started here and we get traction, but I'm all for there being a citizens commission overseeing behavioral health, but I think we get started here and see how well it does. So I'm just really passionate about the equality and equitable conversation. I have 2 disabled kids, as many of you know, and I experience it every day. The pandemic has been horrible for my kids. There's been no services for them. I've watched what happened to my organization that I serve during this time and how to continue to make sure that our underserved populations could still have access to treatment, even though there was pandemic restrictions. And, you know, the people that have the haves kind of did well, and the people that did not, did not. So just trying to find some harmony in our conversations, because it's been a long time I've been listening to, frankly, the disparity that is present in this room and the hardships we've all experienced. And how can we come together as commissioners to make this entire process more accessible, more fair, more equitable, and more valued for the people that deserve these federal dollars.
I had a question or a comment, kind of question comment here that says, how will what we're talking about link with the Behavioral Health Task Force work? And maybe Rachel could expound on that if she has an answer for us.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Just overall, that I'm on the co-occurring disability work group, and we're all the things that we're talking about here are focus of what we're working on. So I don't have much, you know, it's a lot of work and a lot of tiers to what we're doing. So, but overall, that's our focus, and really serving individuals with different needs and not sending them to a million different places to get their needs met. So it's exciting. I think that it's a good focus for one of the subgroups of the task force.
So how it would interface with what the task force is doing is if we start taking on the model and the research that they're doing, we would start learning how to make better recommendations through all of our subcommittees based on taking a lens at, taking the look through inequalities, lack of equitable distribution. So I would say it complements the work that the task force is doing, and it helps us prioritize our recommendations. It's if each subcommittee always has the lens of, are we acting in the best interest in making these recommendations through an equitable conversation that will provide these resources to the people that need them the most? Because remember, these are block grant funding is what we're charged to discuss, and the block grant funding is safety net funding that comes in and fills in all the blanks throughout the state where there is gaps in services, and the block grant funding is really designed to be a safety net for people falling through. And Ryan can jump in and correct me if I'm going too far, but I'm a safety net organization and block grant funded. So therefore, in my organization, we make sure our block grant dollars go towards the equity conversations that I'm having with the commission today, to make sure people that don't have access to care can have care, and that those dollars are used for them. So I'm saying if we get more into a conversation about that, I think we will have better outcomes when we're just advising OBH on how to be more equitable with their distribution of funds and what our recommendations are on that and how we perceive equality with our block grant funding.
James, did you have your hand raised? I saw that a second ago.
I did. I mean, first off, thank you, everybody, Bob, Ty, for bringing this up because it needs to be talked about. The one thing that I can see, and this really comes from our organization and what we're looking at now, is this conversation is great, but in our organization, we don't have the diversity. We're primarily white. So starting at that fundamental level of let's look at that, let's internal audit, how do we start to change some of these things? So I kind of bring that to BPAC. How do we as a group make sure to make these recommendations that we have a diverse group of people inside of BPAC, because I don't know the needs of some of these. We can sit there and talk about it, but I think how do we as BPAC members truly go out into our communities and get some of these diverse groups and peoples and organizations into this to better inform, moving forward on where this diversity and where the BPAC dollars need to go. I mean, that's just a question that internally as an organization, we're really looking at. And I'm not saying I have an answer, but I think it's a good conversation place to start. How do we get this group of people, this amazing group of humans that are doing this work, how do we diversify that even more and bring in some of these subgroups and cultures?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And 7 years ago, I pushed my application as and I have the luxury of being an executive director, so it carries a little bit of weight, but maybe if I wasn't an executive director, I might not have been selected. But I actually really applied to be on this commission as a gay individual to bring that perspective from my community. And as you know, I've brought up my community several times through these conversations through the years, but I'm absolutely appreciative for what Advocates of Recovery is doing and what you just said. So this is the conversation we're having today. That's why I'm saying a professor and some of these folks that can come in from universities and have deeper conversations with us about what does inequality, equality, and equal mean when you're in this professional setting, having to make recommendations and thinking about people who are not at the table. So it's much deeper, and it takes time to learn about, are making equitable decisions. School districts have some of these equity officers now. So I applaud advocates for taking a look at this. And again, whatever the commission wants to do, I just wanted to bring this forth today that I see inequality in our work, and I just wanted to bring it to our attention.
And Bob talked about this earlier about 7 years ago, and Tanya was in this conversation with you, Bob, about recovery doesn't have a voice. So looking back, I mean, how did we get that? We could maybe even use that as just a stepping stone model of how did we get out into the community and bring more voice of recovery? I know it looks different when we're talking about diversity, but not really in a fundamental level, So how do we do that within our communities? I don't know if BPAC can do that kind of diversity internal audit, to where there's a needs assessment. I'm not sure if that's something that we can do, but yeah, I resonate with Bob, and I appreciate him and everybody being here, and having this important conversation.
Definitely. Victoria, you started to say something?
I just wanted to say, I think one thing that the BPAC offers is that you don't have to be a member to attend. I've been attending for 2 years, and I'm not a member because the amount of red tape I have to go through with the government to be able to do that is just not worth my time. But this is worth my time. So I think there's that opportunity to invite people to attend, see if it is something that they are interested in and that they want to lend a voice to and feel included in on, and then it can go from there. So that's just a suggestion.
Part of one of the equity conversations that you just said, what I really appreciate to jump in is maybe one of the subcommittees actually just focuses on how are we doing with diversity? How are we doing with the equity of getting these monies to the diverse communities. This is exactly part of what I'm talking about for our subcommittee work. And I'm going to tag Marcella, because her and I have started off years ago, and I recruited Marcella to BPAC. And I was gravely concerned about our Latino community, North Denver, our Coloradans, Pueblo, Charlie. We had many underserved populations. So Marcella, you're my partner in crime in some of this stuff. So I'm waiting to hear from you, girl.
Bob, thank you. I started to say something earlier, in fact, right after Ty, because with the discussions that we were having, I was not necessarily getting confused, but my thoughts were going in different directions. I completely agreed with Ty, for example, on some of his points, and then on the other, I think, well, but sometimes it's how I'm described, so I don't consider it a label. It's a description of who I am. You just mentioned Hispanic, Chicana. I'm also a grandmother, a senior citizen. Some of my kids would tell you that I'm mentally disabled now because they love to take care of me. They wonder if I make good decisions all the time because I'm still going like I was 16. But anyway, thank you, Bob, because yes, you did recruit me, and I had heard of the group, and I remember clearly your first couple of sentences, and that is, we need diversity. This group needs diversity. We need to hear from different groups. And I was somewhat surprised because of the responsibility of this group when I first came in, and I didn't see very much of individuals who might look like me. Almost no one spoke like me with my slight accent from New Mexico. But I still feel like, in a sense, you said earlier, 2021, and we're still talking about this. Wow. I can do a presentation. I've done it for a long time on how to become more diverse, how to recruit, how to retain. This is one of the reasons that I was on the treatment committee and why I worked so hard on workforce development, because we're so underrepresented in that area as well with clinicians. Thank goodness for some of the funding, because we've been able to grow a lot of people of color into the field. Without that, we wouldn't have been able to do it. But I want to say, Bob, that I think we need to continue to focus and name it so we can really tame it. The whole idea of what is equity and what is cultural competence. I've met so many people that I want to get into the recovery and peer coach recovery program because Hispanics and African Americans really need that. And I'm also finding more and more Asian, different populations, but the Asian community. And so I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but it's because I'm getting desperate. I'm really getting desperate. I'm kind of afraid of Bob leaving the group because I feel like I'm going to be a little bit abandoned, that I might be alone. And I know that all of you are committed, yet we are still at the same place. How do we do it? How do we do cultural competence? I'll do what I can. I'll do what I can. Thank you.
Yeah, Marcel, one thought I had as all of you were talking is this is a great opportunity to have some people step into leadership for the coming year who have this vision and voice and difference and can help all of us be able to understand better and to keep it in focus. Because I think we all mean to, I think we just lose sight. And it's like you said, keep naming it, keep saying it, because we have to keep it at the forefront of our mind as we're looking at all these issues. And that's why we wanted to have the conversation today, is again to be able to do that and put it back out there. You know, we talk a lot about rural populations. So that is something we've kept in our minds and we say, but we have not gotten to the majority of these other things that all of you brought forward. So we need to repeat it. We all need to repeat it. But I would encourage you to contemplate, you know, the new leadership opportunity that's coming in the fall to take over this wonderful group and help, you know, build that into it in coming October. Not to say we're not going to look at it from now till then, but you know, you could make a huge difference and impact considering that. If you're able to do that, I would love to see that be something that happens for our new leadership group.
And I will stay advisory and stay a part of the commission because of my passion. I don't want to start something and bounce. I just won't be a voting member, and I'm happy to be on the executive committee moving forth. I just, you know, when I retire from the commission, I can join executive to continue to help the equity and the diversity conversation that we need to have. But with that, I also say to the group that it's great to label it and it's great to keep on reminding ourselves, but until we change our bylaws and take a look at diversity in our bylaws and actually have a bylaw conversation and how they were written, then that really holds us accountable. So some of this also has to be accountability and it has to be structural change. If we, you know, because we've been saying this for 7 years. So we have to take a look at our bylaws and have to take a look at our subcommittees. And this might have to be a question that each subcommittee answers. So I don't want to do too much of the work because I really want 51 of us to have a say and to do this. That's why I said bringing in a consultant, bringing in people to actually, and I absolutely have seen Marcella's presentation at Metro years ago and many years ago. And I think Marcella can do something. I think I can do something and bring in LGBTQ and the Transgender Center of the Rockies. So, you know, it's a pandemic year. Maybe we start focusing on, you know, really racism when it comes to substance use, mental health and recovery. And we've not addressed those issues and the barriers of the workforce for that issue and our consumers. So when I talk about equality, I'm getting deep with it. And it's a big thing to bite off, but we have to take it in chunks and we have to choose where we start. And that's all I'm saying to the group is it's big and it's not going to happen this year, next year. It's something that's always evolutionary. And, but as a voting member, I wanted to make sure I left having the conversation that in my 7 years, and it's not intentional, we've just never been able to arrive on any decision based on equality, equity, race, and fairness, because it's just not what we have been charged to do, and it's not in our bylaws. So many of our conversations have been left kind of undone. And what happened 7 years ago when Advocates of Recovery and Tanya showed up in a room and she said, hey, y'all, I want to start a recovery organization and I'm going to advocate. And we were like, where are you getting the money? You're not touching ours. Touch mental health. They've got more. I mean, we had some heated debates over a really proven concept to work. I myself was defensive and was open to it. So these are just the conversations that we need to have as providers and as citizens. And so I'm going to tag Ryan right now. And Ryan, what is happening at OBH when it comes to some of the conversations we're having when it comes to fairness and equity and service dollars? And are there any conversations, and is there anything you can update us on about what's happening at the state level with our conversation?
Yep, absolutely. And thanks for this fabulous discussion. And I would even challenge BPAC is that this shouldn't be a subcommittee thing. This should be BPAC. This should be that conversation every single month, is that this shouldn't be thrown to a subcommittee to do this work, because this is everyone's work. You're on BPAC. Like Bob said, this is 51% individuals, lived experience advocates, and family members. Like this, BPAC is like no other advisory council in the state. with that. It is about people. It is about the citizens of Colorado. And I think as BPAC, we need to do better about representation and diversity for members. And Ty, I know that goes into kind of the labeling stuff, but I think that is the piece where if we are trying to make some sort of recommendations and policy decisions that the state implements, we need to have those communities represented in those decisions. Katia, thank you for coming. I mean, having a youth voice here needs to happen, right? Like we need to make sure that across the board recommendations are being, and having the conversations about recommendations. Well, how does that affect different communities? How does that affect rural versus urban? How does that affect everyone in the state? And we need to have a diverse group here to make sure that we are touching all those things. But yeah, and this is really the opportunity now. There's the chat about how does this relate to the task force and how does this relate to the Behavioral Health Administration? This is really the time for that. I mean, across the state, everyone is looking at this right now. Behavioral health and diversity, inclusion, everything is really on the table, and this is our opportunity. And we need to take that opportunity to make sure that our behavioral health system functions for everyone. The piece with that is it's twofold, right? Like there's a current behavioral health system and an ideal state. We're kind of working in between those two. Like how do we get to an ideal state, or how do we define what an ideal state is? And then what are some of these barriers that we have with a siloed system? There's mental health specific statutes, right? The Colorado laws are specific to mental health versus substance use. So what does co-occurring look like with how state laws are siloed? So, I mean, we need to have those conversations about the current system. And that's really back to what Bob brought up about block grant. Block grant is to fill those gaps, but we need to identify what those gaps are first, and really have those conversations about, wait, are those gaps even larger for certain populations across the state? And this is, I think, the perfect opportunity with this group to do that.
I've had my hand up for a while now. Can I say something?
Sorry, Ty, go ahead.
I have a couple things to say. Back when BPAC was first being formed, and a little bit before that, it was the Mental Health Planning and Advisory Council. We had subcommittees of targeted areas that we wanted to do, youth and young adults, older adults, even a consumer committee. And I feel that's when BPAC, from my experience, when it was at its strongest. Those committees did a lot of work and really informed the council and brought information and expertise to the council. I remember one of the things that we wanted to do was create a cabinet position for behavioral health in the governor's office. I'm not sure what happened to that. I resigned from BPAC shortly after it was formed. That might be something worth looking up to. The other thing I wanted to say is when I first came here, one of the things I really wanted to bring, and one of the things I wanted to really address is the high-end utilizers, the portion of our population that uses up the majority of our resources. I don't know what that looks like in Colorado anymore. We've changed our services. We've changed what we've provided. I just know that they're still out there, and I know they're still out there because we're not addressing the system adequately. There's a few other things I wanted to say, but I just wanted to go back towards having, you know, I really saw a strong council when we had strong committees that represented the communities that we cared about.
Yeah, and that's something definitely that could be looked at again by new leadership coming in October, to reformulate committees of what would that look like and address it from the bylaws, like Bob mentioned. The bylaws have always directed us toward prevention, primary prevention, treatment, and recovery. But maybe it is time to look at that and make some shifts in the bylaws that would encourage more equity and more people, more diversity, and also maybe reestablish some focuses that you were talking about, Ty. So I think the neat thing about this is there's a lot of great opportunity for you guys in this coming year, because BPAC is kind of on a 2-year rotation. It's typically been 1 year of doing some education, and the second year really focused on formulating the recommendations for the block grant. We're finishing that second year. We're doing our recommendations. And when the new team comes in October, you guys have that whole year to really restructure and reframe what you want this group to look like. So again, really encourage people to look at taking on leadership positions, being part of some of what you're talking about to create that change, and then taking off with it in that year that you will have, without having the burden of the piece. Not burden, that's a bad word, but you know what I mean. It's, we have a very specific focus on year 2, and we have to do certain tasks to be able to meet our requirements of those recommendations. So having that first year to be able to do some new things makes sense to me. So I really, invalidate what everyone said, encourage you all to think about leadership roles, and then to look at this as what you could do over the course of that next year as the new leadership comes in, formulating subcommittees, doing group rooms and Zoom to do some of that work. I think there's all sorts of wonderful opportunities there. Okay, guys.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Claudia. No, please, go ahead.
I don't think Ryan really answered Robert's question and what OBH is doing for diversity and stuff like that. I know we want to do a lot, but I was really discouraged when OBH didn't do more for Black Lives Matter and Elijah McClain. So I'm still really upset with Jared Polis. I'm very upset with Aurora Police Department, and I'm very upset with OBH because we're still partnering with lots of police departments and stuff like that. I thought we would have done more and wanted to, but it's really hard when leadership isn't totally on board and or doesn't know how to address it, and they just sweep it under the rug, kind of. And so Elijah McClain should have turned 25, and he didn't. And there's lots of Latino men in that same position, lots of other Black men that, don't have the proof or evidence to even, have a case. And it's just really upsetting to know that I work for the Office of Behavioral Health and we didn't talk more about Black Lives Matter, other than like a simple email that was sent to everybody else.
It's even worse when mental illness or substance abuse is involved. We've had a lot of deaths that aren't even publicized or get any attention. We've had 2 people die in our state hospital from constipation. I can't think of a more preventable, painful, long-term death. And, no one talks about it. No one does anything about it. And we're more at risk, and no one wants to listen to us or believes us. So I just, it's frustrating when, a young boy, his mother calls the police on him, and this happened, I think around 10 years ago in Florida. Mother called the police on her son for not taking his medication. The officer took him into the hospital, into the bathroom, tasered him, forced him to take his medication, and somehow killed him. It's just, it's frustrating that we as vulnerable populations don't get any coverage at all.
So talking about Elijah McClain, which is absolutely devastating, and I actually know the family personally. And not to call out Ryan, he might not be able to answer that question. That's why I brought it to him. That wasn't to single him out. But what I appreciate about what we're talking about today is, and why I'm pushing us to do it is, don't look to Jared Polis, don't look to Ryan, don't look to our state government to handle us, because we will continue to be victimized. Part of the equity conversation I'm having today is because there's victimization in this conversation, and that's exactly what I just heard in the last two statements. So that is why this commission needs to start taking a look at the inequalities, race, and how our safety net block grant dollars are being spent to address those needs. And as we fill in the gaps with these safety net dollars, it will help police departments, it will help marginalized communities, it will help OBH, but don't feel victimized. I know it's easy for me to say that. We have the power to make significant recommendations and bylaw changes to do this work and to do it now. And, you know, that's all I'm saying. We have a limited scope, but with the scope that we do have, we have control to make some powerful recommendations on our federal block grant funding. So, but if you feel victimized, we are. If you feel that the state can supply us support, they may not know what to do. And if we continue to challenge them on their inadequacies and the fact that they are unequitable and inequitable in how they offer services and communication to the community, remember, government is of the people, by the people. So we are the people right now, and there's 51 of us to make these conversations. So feel empowered. My conversation was really to empower us today to finally get to a point of view of making changes, but not to be victimized any further. And we need to represent Elijah. We need to help the Aurora Police Department so they never do this again. And the only way we stop Black men and men of color and other communities and trans women of color and gay men from being, you know, and women and domestic violence, the whole gamut of society's concerns. If we wait for someone else to do this for us, the shit ain't getting done. So all I'm saying is, let's not be victims to this process, but be empowered that what power we do have, we should exercise.
Thank you, Bob. I think that's a great way to round everything up and complete our conversation on this today. So thank you guys for your participation. Thank you for your heart and passion, for your sharing your experiences and your concerns. And I really want us to keep all of these things in mind as we move forward with looking at making those recommendations. I think it would be good to go ahead and take a break now rather than where we had it, but I will let Marcella say something before we go to break. But I want to do a 10-minute break and come back. We'll start with recommendations, then we'll take another brief break, and we'll finish up with our OBH updates. Marcella, go ahead.
I wanted to take the opportunity because I did not ignore your comment regarding potential for leadership in the next section or in the next year. I do want to say that it should not take one of me or one of Bob to lead the goal. It can be any one of you. We just need a champion, somebody who has passion for the very same areas that Bob and I have talked about. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that. Someone else could step up and take the leadership and be the champion for this cause. I also wanted to mention that I believe that something is going on in Aurora that's hopeful. I sent Ryan an email this week because the city of Aurora actually made contact with us to work with a group with a population in the city of Aurora, and I need some funding for some of the things that they're creating. I want to be able to suggest that and respond to that when they are reaching out, because I think if you've worked with me for any period of time, you know that if I have a concern, I'm going to be part of the solution. I completely agree with Bob. I'm not going to remain in the victim role. I may momentarily when it hurts, right? When it grieves me, but the idea is for us to step up and be part of the solution. So again, Ryan, you weren't the only one that I sent an email to, but the city of Aurora has reached out to IDEA to do something. And so I just wanted to give everybody some, maybe a little bit of hope that, hey, somebody's eyes are opening. Let's respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcella. Okay, 10-minute break. It's 10:19, 10:20. We're going to come back at 10:30. Thank you, guys.
It's only an education. It's not a PhD. It's an EDD.
Okay, guys, it's 10:30. That was a fast break. Want to get started on what we were wanting to look at were the recommendations and starting the formulation of those based on the culmination of all of your input from September through last month and the wonderful job that our TAs did helping guide our conversations each month. Thank you very much to all of our OBH TAs. We really appreciate that. And Caitlin, who I'm sure will be joining us, she has another committee she is on that has become a bit of a conflict with this one, but she will be back shortly. And she did a great job helping, as well as Ryan, to summarize all of your comments. And then Donda did a beautiful job in getting everything sent out to all of you and in a way that we can break things down and begin to have the discussion around the recommendations we'd like to make this year. So if you have the handout that says BPAC recommendations based on meeting minutes, that's what I'm looking at currently. There are 10 items along with several bullet points and questions underneath each to consider. And I would love for us to begin the conversation looking at these and going through some of those and hearing what your thoughts are.
Can someone send that back out, please?
Yes, Donda will do that.
Okay. And then Julie, just a point of order. In the last meeting, I was hoping to take a vote on moving the commission to having an official subcommittee created to start addressing the equality conversations. Can that vote happen today? We postponed it for the discussion. So I'd like to kind of get a temperature check on to see if people want to go in this direction with a vote.
Gotcha. Yeah, I apologize. I forgot about that. I remembered the conversation and not that component. So if you guys would like to do that for new leadership in October to take on, we could vote on that now. Or if you guys would like to think about it again and contemplate how BPAC as a whole could do this, especially again, when you have that year off of block grant recommendations. I totally leave it up to you guys. You guys will be formulating this, and I want you to feel free to do what you feel is best. So any discussion on having a vote about a subcommittee initially, and then maybe making it the entire BPAC that's working on this in the fall? How do you guys want to proceed?
There needs to be a second before discussion.
Sorry.
Point of order.
I'll second.
Okay, Ty, thank you. So Bob has made the motion. Ty has seconded. All in favor of having this conversation, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? And any abstaining for any reason? All right, so it looks like we can go forward with a little discussion here. We may just not even begin recommendations depending on how this goes. So we'll figure that out, but go ahead and have your discussion.
Julie, this is Margie. I had sent a behind the scenes email to Natalie, and if we were thinking that if some of this work can be done by the membership committee, just because that I think is some of our charge. So if, just to let people know that we will outreach to Lloyd and then Brian to see how we maybe can to look at the membership, how we're doing that and engaging people. So I think that could possibly be a helpful place to start, at least. If there's going to be in a separate subcommittee, how we can work with that. and make
Absolutely.
sure we're
Yeah.
part of it, because I think it's looking at both the bylaws, but it's also then how are we outreaching and being inclusive as we're choosing new members moving forward.
Agree.
Thank
If I
you,
could
Margie.
put,
I've been trying to speak up about that for a while. So if we need to discuss that more, I think that that's good. But I'm feeling like there needs to be some person, as Marcella mentioned earlier, a champion or a group that has bottom line that can start this process. I think that would be a good way to go.
if I could jump in and get us all on the same footing, so to speak, I'd like to charge the state with bringing in some technical assistance to actually have a conversation on what equity is, to make sure we all understand what it is I'm proposing. And everyone has their own definition and it means something different to everyone. But for the work that we're doing, Ryan, are you able to offer us technical assistance in a presentation on equity and in terms of our work, either through a professor from CU, CSU that specializes in this? I know there's some people around the state, but I'd like to, as a voting member, to put forth an official request for TA support for the conversation for our commission on equity.
I think that's a great idea. That would be much appreciated.
And commissioners, is that something we vote on? So Ryan actually has charge because we voted on it and we give it teeth? Or Ryan, can you just take it based on our suggestion? What would you need to do to go back to your peeps?
So I think the best route, formal motion with a second and a vote from BPAC calling for OBH to do something specific for, right?
Okay.
So just as a general motion, what the recommendation, what advising OBH as a whole.
Julie, may I have the floor to put forth a motion?
Yes.
BPAC is requesting technical assistance from the Office of Behavioral Health on the conversation of equity and inequities in terms of behavioral health. We would like an education seminar and someone to come speak to us about equity and what equity means.
Is there a second?
This is Brian Laney. I will
second.
second that.
Brian and Marcella. Okay, all in favor, say aye or raise hand.
Before we vote, there should be discussion. I would like to recommend that either the membership committee or this equitable committee that's being formed be the group that maybe identifies subject matter expertise to come in. And I just recommend that because I feel that, no offense, Ryan, but what we want as education should be coming from our group and not an outside entity that may not have a full understanding of what we're looking for.
So I think the motion at hand, however, is to have OBH look at bringing someone to us to have that can create more conversation. So that's my understanding of the motion, which is why I moved forward, because most everyone said they agreed they would like to see that. There definitely can be more conversation about then, once a presentation has been made, who then else should come in and share, who should also be considered, and whether or not you guys want to have a subcommittee or do this as a whole as BPAC. So I think we'll go ahead and do the motion, and we had a first and a second. So let's vote on just the fact that we want OBH to bring us someone to start our conversation and education about this. Okay, everybody okay with that?
Yes.
I'm just saying that if you have a motion and the second motion, the next step is to have discussion and then call for the vote.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So Ty, part of my technical assistance was just real high level again. And what I really appreciate about you is you want to get it right down in the grassroots right away. I'm loving it, but I simply just want to put forth the motion as a technical assistance request to get the foundation of the definition. I want us all at least on the same footing as to what it is that we're talking about. The next step after that, once we all are equal in our understanding of what we're doing, is to get into the grassroots and who would we like to invite back once we all have the same footing. So that was the motion, and that was the TA request.
I understand that. I'm just saying the procedure of making a motion is first make the motion, second is to second it, third is any discussion. I brought up some discussion, and then we move on to the vote. If there's no further discussion, then we can move on to the vote. I'm just saying you can't discredit what I said because it's part of that. If there's no change, then the motion continues as is.
Okay, so are we
Bob,
ready
I
to vote,
appreciate
or
your
is there any other
clarification.
discussion?
Thank you.
Yeah, is there any other discussion, or are we ready to vote?
Oh, I had a comment real quick. So I'm Bonnie, I'm your prevention TA, and Ryan, I just wanted to make the offer to you, and I can make it offline too, but I'm part of our internal EDI matrix at OBH. I'm not an expert, so I'm not recommending myself, but Ryan, I can work with you offline to help with this request and identify potential candidates.
Yeah, so that's kind of the background to why having specific assign OBH certain things, so then we can utilize all kind of OBH resources to pursue. I'm guessing we'll come back if this motion formally goes through with kind of, okay, here's a list of folks that we could potentially identify and come back to y'all about who does that look like, who are you thinking, so it's not us making a determination about who you get. We want to have this open conversation with y'all to make sure that you're on board with any decisions and follow-up that we may have.
So does that satisfy what you mean, Ty? Because my comment was, my discussion was going to be that I trust that OBH would actually be open to recommendations. I think between some of us, we have several, even from a national level. And so I think just putting a note that we would be able to be part of the selection might satisfy your comments, Ty, is that right?
Yes, my concern and my comment was made because I want to make sure that we get the education that we are looking for and not something that kind of narrows down what was, it's weird when the advisory committee goes to the place that we're supposed to be advising to have them advise us.
Good, okay. So just note that we would all be able to provide Ryan, OBH, with some recommendations.
Brian, you unmuted. Did you want to say something? Nope. Okay. I was Brian Laney. Sorry. I saw Brian unmute. I thought he wanted to say something, so I wanted to give him an opportunity. All right, we're good. Any other discussion prior to voting on Bob's proposed option here? Okay, so all of those in favor, raise hand, say aye, wave.
This is Ty, aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And any abstaining? Okay, Bob's motion carries. It's very exciting. I think some good things can come from the new direction I already see. Those of you taking on, whether it's formal leadership or not, doesn't matter. You're taking on a leadership role to recreate these things, and I'm excited. It's going to be good. And we'll primarily be looking at a lot of these initiatives happening after we have completed our recommendations. With all of these things in mind, we will complete recommendations this month, next month, vote on them in May and submit them. And June, we will get the OBH response. After that, everything can kind of shift more this direction and begin looking at these things. And membership was going to be looking at membership campaign for the summer. So it makes good sense for them to start talking about these things then, so that they can make sure you guys have the membership you need come fall for the new folks. And so I think it's good timing as well. I think we'll be able to move things in that direction. So, and also to let you know, I don't believe Lloyd is staying on, as I think he has served his 2 terms as well and will be terming out along with me. And so be considering who you would like to have be your membership head. And of course, he will also, your co-chair, he will also be happy to help educate and share anything that he has to make that an easy transition as well. Okay, guys, so we have 10 minutes, so we're not even gonna do that. We're gonna take another quick break. We'll come back and we'll finish with OBH updates, and we will start looking at these recommendations next month. We'll actually have to complete it next month because we'll be voting on things in May. So I would just request that you guys would take the time to look at that page and really have some ideas of where you want to go with that next month, so we can be sure and accomplish that, because that'll be a lot for us to do in 1 month, I realize, and I apologize, but this was very important and I'm grateful for the conversation. So let's just do, it looks like we are at 1:45. Can we just do a quick 5-minute break? Will that be enough for everybody to just do a quick 5-minute? Okay, let's do 5 minutes, come back at 10 till, and we'll turn things over to Ryan. Thank you, guys. Appreciate everybody's flexibility today. We are going to come back and let Ryan share with us the OBH updates and all the legislative information. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan.
Thanks, Julie. So yeah, we've been doing the updates on MHDCJS, which is the Mental Health Disorders and Criminal Justice System task force that Ty represents Bhpac on. So Ty, do you have any updates for from MHDCJS?
I don't have anything from the task force itself. Most of our meeting last meeting was matrix planning to determine where we're going in the future. The subcommittee's housing is working on a draft language changes that we're recommending. And then the data subcommittee is working on, I think, a bill to have marijuana stores have more options for THC availability for people. Other than that, really don't have anything.
Thanks, Ty. And then the State Rehabilitation Council with Lorraine. Have any updates from?
Just that on Tuesday, I received a request for a short bio. I had already, I guess a summary of my resume. I had already submitted the application. But they just asked me for that on Tuesday. And then yesterday, I got an invitation to attend their next meeting on March 17th. It's from 9 to 3. And since I haven't been approved by the state yet, she said I could drop in for however many hours I wanted to that day. So really no news.
Yep, the bureaucratic maze of getting appointed to a council or board, right? So yeah, thanks both of you. Yeah, we'll continue to have those updates. I guess I'd open that up. Is there any questions from anyone for Ty related to MHDCJS or Lorraine related to SRC? All right, so then moving along, just a reminder that OBH sends out monthly news and updates. Hopefully you're all on that list. If you're not, we can send out where to get that. I'm not going to go over what was sent out there. There's a lot of funding opportunity stuff. There's a lot of news. There's stuff about trainings. So just if you're looking for those things, that's a great resource to have. Yeah, and just so we're not repeating a lot of that language that can be had through that monthly newsletter please go there to find that information. Because we got a lot of stuff, because the 2021 Colorado legislative session is back. So I'm going to put a link to, let's see if everyone can access that. So I just put a link in the chat. This is, we could have a discussion about, is this the right format that BPAC wants with related legislation that has been introduced? First off, I should ask, did everyone get that link, and can you open it and access it?
It worked for me.
Good. So hopefully if it works for one, it works for everyone in an ideal world. But yeah, either offline or just through the chat, let me know if you're having issues. So this is really the, I've created it's through state bill, created a report that I will add behavioral health related bills, or if there's bills that you know have been introduced that are not on my list, definitely let me know so I can make sure that they are on my list. And then essentially every month we'll go over these bills. We'll have that conversation about where these bills are at. And the piece with this is that us all being members of the Colorado community, you have access to go to the Capitol, or maybe limited access to actually go to the Capitol, but participate with local legislators about these bills. Yeah, previously, we've had those discussions about formally supporting different things through BPAC. Just how quick bills go, it's usually better to take an independent role in your civil duty of the bills running through the General Assembly. So with that getting started, so from the top of the list, well, I guess I should say with this dossier, you can click on each bill. The blue on the top will bring you directly to the bill language. So just you have a spot here is that these are all the bills. There's a spot for you to look if you want to get more in depth. I'm just going to quickly go over some of the summaries about these bills. And then if we have any questions, we can have those conversations in here. Sound good? So with that, House Bill 1012, expand prescription drug monitoring program. So the PDMP, that's the prescription drug monitoring program. It's a program to essentially track how many opioid prescriptions are being administered. It's run through the pharmacies, and the Department of Regulatory Agencies runs the prescription drug monitoring program. So it's expanding that to include other medications on that list as well. Yeah. Not a whole ton of information or additions in there, but just a FYI more so. This is the one Ty and I were talking about during the break is House Bill 1014, the disability symbol identification document. So this is really an option for folks to get a discrete disability identifier on a driver's license or identification card. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones through the Department of Revenue that would potentially be adding this ability to put this symbol on an ID or a driver's license to show that the individual has a disability. Ty, do you have anything to add to that?
I have a whole lot I want to add. I have mixed feelings. As a person with a mental illness, there have been times where I have wanted such a thing to show that I'm disabled, and you know, it ties in towards, then I start worrying that, you know, if I explain that I'm disabled, no one's going to believe me, which just makes me more anxious, which feeds into the disability more. All that being said, I think a piece of legislation like this needs to have a lot of discrimination protection in it. I am terrified of how people might use this against people with disabilities. Anyone who wants to check an ID for, you know, getting a mortgage, Facebook, you know, checking your identity. They asked me for a copy of my ID. Police officer pulling you over. who's had a bad experience with people with a mental illness. I'm just so terrified that this might be a key and a slippery slope towards discrimination. And, you know, I hate saying this, but, you know, and even the Holocaust, you know, in World War II, making people wear a symbol. They did this for mental illness too, and wiped out people. I want this, but at the same time, I want to make sure I'm protected. So I don't think we're ready for it. That's my 2 cents.
Yep, thanks, Ty.
I would go along with what Ty has said. I just don't understand the reason for it. And maybe it's in the larger bill language where they rationalize why they're doing the bill, why they think it's a good idea, but it does, I don't understand why they're doing it.
From my understanding, it's primarily for police officers. If you get pulled over, you have to show them your ID, and the police officers will then do a check, and they will pop up with some information. I don't know how much information about the disability it will go into, but it's so police officers can be more understanding to people with disabilities. That being said, anything that can be used that way can be used the other way.
I think also the mailing on that is that it would also be helpful for first responders like EMS to know if they were reporting to a scene of an accident or something like that, and someone was in a situation where they could not communicate or are unable to communicate effectively. So but I see it from both sides, especially as a parent of someone with special needs who is non-communicative, that I could see where it can go both ways. But I do think that I've heard working with the fire department that for first responders, that could be very helpful.
Yeah,
Okay, I
Victoria,
see
that
that
just
point of view, but I have a medical alert bracelet that I wear that is not connected with the state in any way. And I would think it would be easier to identify than a license card that the police officer, I'm doing something and the police officer is getting nervous.
Right.
And is he or she going to see that secret symbol?
Right. But
and I'll leave it at this. It just seems to me that we are trying to legalize police officers, who I love, police officers to treat people kindly. Oh, they've got a disability, I should be nice to them, instead of a, you know what? I think they should be nice to everybody, protect and serve. So that's my 2 cents right off the top of my head.
And I totally agree. I think for people though that have sensory issues that won't wear jewelry or can't, that it's another opportunity to identify them, especially if they can't do that themselves. So I hear you, Lorraine. I know it's complicated.
Yeah, I have a grown son who has autism, and so he is an example. He rides his bike, and he was crossing a parking area, and a car hit him, and he was not injured, thankfully, but obviously very startled and scared. And his communication skills, as his anxiety revs up, are challenging, and so it would have been helpful for the police officers to understand his particular issue, so that they would have not felt like he was being not cooperative, you know, that they could understand what was happening with him. So that would just be an example of where it would have been helpful if used appropriately.
I don't think it should be an ID or a license, because I don't think our police force has enough training to actually handle communicating with someone with disabilities. And another thing too is that licenses already have for undocumented people a black mark across them, letting them know that they are still undocumented. And I disagree with anything that makes it different or able to identify someone that is not from America, but has a driver's license. And the wrong police officer knowing that, I don't think would be as merciful and would be more okay with the deportation than just giving them a ticket, a speeding ticket.
I really think, and I haven't seen anything. I have a friend that is being asked in Alaska what they think, um, but I think really heavy protections need to be put in, because it's not just the police officers that see this. You know, it's banks, it's bars, it's anyone who asks to see it. And I think that opens up even if we train the police officers to be perfect, there's still the general community out there. And I would worry about discrimination against people. I'd like to say, and it's really important to say, that this is not mandatory, that this is voluntary, which is important. But again, if we're going to go forward with something like this, we need to make sure that vulnerable populations aren't, this isn't used against them.
Yep, so a lot of discussion with that one. The next one, I imagine we'll have some discussion as well. So this House Bill 1021, the peer support professionals, behavioral health. So this is a very similar bill that was introduced last year, but didn't make it due to the COVID happening. So this is where the Office of Behavioral Health will need to set up an approval process for what is being defined as a recovery support service organization to essentially allow Medicaid, or allow them to have the potential to have Medicaid reimburse those RSSOs for peer support professional services within those organizations. Yeah, so very similar bill that happened last year. Like I said, that didn't make it. It also requires contracts entered into between OBH and MSOs, the designated managed service organizations. So those are those entities that oversee the utilization of public substance use disorder funds across regions, that those contracts between OBH and the MSOs have terms and conditions related to the support for peer-run recovery support service organizations. So essentially how are MSOs utilizing peer-run services within their regions. Questions about peers, or is this just old news from because it was a bill last year? Hearing none, moving along. So House Bill 1030, expand peace officers mental health grant program. If anyone listened to the earlier this week, this was in committee. There was a ton of testimony related to this program. So this is a program that it's not an OBH program. I think it's within the Department of Local Affairs. It's about a grant program specific to law enforcement. Kind of a dual purpose is that it's either can be for getting the mental health services for law enforcement officers, as well as provide some grant funding for diversion type programs such as co-responder. The plan for this bill, is my understanding, is that it would be expanding the utilization to this grant program to further expand the utilization for diversion type programs, which received a ton of feedback. Kind of what we've talked a little bit about here today is that it's the whole conversation about, do we want law enforcement being the ones to interact, even if they are on a co-responder team, or should we set up a new system that it's non-law enforcement interacting with folks with behavioral health concerns? So this is part of that conversation, but it also brings up the whole conversation earlier about state departments and where state departments fit into this whole conversation. There's a ton of behavioral health programs across different departments. Summer came in and talked about roughly 75 behavioral health programs run by 10 different state departments. So this is one of those programs that isn't housed within an Office of Behavioral Health, but it's related to mental health. So this is hopefully what the Behavioral Health Administration and Health Management Associates, HMA, is doing a comprehensive review of all the Colorado laws to address, well, wait, what programs or what state programs would be better served underneath a unified behavioral health administration? So thinking like a program like this would be one of those ones that hopefully HMA identifies as like, how does this fit into the larger behavioral health system as a whole? But Yeah, so if you're interested in that one, I don't know what happened in committee. It was essentially all day long. I had other meetings, so I couldn't listen to the whole thing, but there's definitely some opposition testimony. So next one, 1085, secure transportation behavioral health. Essentially the same bill as last year. This creates another type of transportation service that essentially aligns with how EMS, emergency medical services, and ambulance are licensed, creates a new licensing category for secure transportation for people in a behavioral health crisis, so they don't have to go into a fully equipped ambulance or essentially a fully equipped hospital, which is the back of an ambulance, or get put in the back of a police car, oftentimes in handcuffs if they're having a behavioral health emergency. So this is more trying to get at the stigma associated with what it is like to receive emergency type services for a behavioral health condition. That one is run through the health department and locally managed through county commissioners, just like ambulance services.
I have a question.
Sure, Ty.
Like 20 years ago, so long time ago, I was part of a group that talked about peers doing this. Would this be something that peers were capable of doing, or would the criteria be too high for them to create peer-run divergent services?
That's a really good question. So it's the health department that would promulgate rules to come up with what are the actual requirements, what are the physical requirements of a vehicle, as well as what is the training and requirements for individuals providing the service. So that would be my understanding is that would be a rule-making process through the health department that would come up with what are those, the training and physical car standards. But yeah, it seems like, I mean, this would be a fantastic opportunity for peers to be involved really on the front end of a behavioral health emergency. So I'm thinking about peers as a whole, right? So, and expanding what peers could potentially be eligible to do. Next one, 1090. Oh, go ahead, Carrie.
Just being, because I supervise a co-responder team here down in Colorado Springs, and it is based out of a law enforcement agency. With that transport, is there discussion around for mental health holds, or are those voluntary transports that this bill is really addressing?
My understanding is that it would be for both folks seeking services voluntarily in an emergency situation or individuals on some sort of involuntary procedure. There's some stuff that needs to get worked out related to the medical clearance type stuff, because that's where, I mean, the whole ambulance system has the ability to manage those things a little better than what this secure transportation may look like. So I think there's a lot of pieces that still need to get worked out with this. But yeah, my understanding is it was for both.
The liability that either the transport or the law enforcement agency takes on if the law enforcement agency and or the clinician, and in my case as part of the co-responder team, writes the M1 hold, but then gives the individual over to someone else to actually make sure the transport happens and happens safely. And so I'm definitely interested to see how they address that.
Yeah,
right.
As am I, definitely. Yeah, Victoria.
Is it two questions? So does it include ECs, since ECs aren't technically a hold until they're accepted by the agency they're being referred to, so that they're not technically on a hold until that EC has been accepted, and then so that puts into question whether or not the transport is voluntary or involuntary. And then is there any discussion about reopening the 0.5 hold piece to help assist with that?
Yeah, so first question, EC being the emergency commitment, which is semi-similar to a 72-hour hold, but just like Victoria said, it's really that initial application to get It's probably more like a transportation hold than an actual 72-hour hold. It's just getting someone from somewhere to an approved facility. Just quickly looking at the bill, it does look like it would be the EC part of this because it is included in Article 82 of Title 27. Then the other question related to transportation hold, that it's not addressed in here. Exactly, the transportation hold. So that's the transportation hold for involuntary screening. So that was that new M.5 that was created with Senate Bill 17207. That is part of 2765-105. So it would be included in here. Just as a quick look through the language. But the conversation about potentially updating the transportation hold isn't this conversation. That's happening outside of this, which we'll get to shortly, or outside of the legislative process this year. So far, we haven't got a bill that made changes to it yet. So, House Bill 1090, criminal marijuana offenses, eliminates marijuana possession offenses for less than 2 ounces of marijuana or less. I threw that in there. That's one, I think we had a conversation about marijuana earlier. So we can also have the conversation about if we don't want these bills on our list, we can take them off as well. So 1097, establishing the Behavioral Health Administration. Feels like we've talked about this quite a bit. That this is that first of 3 steps from the Behavioral Health Task Force. This is essentially just creating a behavioral health administration. So it's really that foundational piece about we need to have a law that actually creates this before we can get to the hard and fast details of what the behavioral health administration will do. So this is the creation with the report that needs to happen by November 1st of 2021, related to kind of what we talked about previously about all of the behavioral health programs, what would go under here and where would this be housed. It's currently being proposed as being housed within Department of Human Services, with the idea about that may not be the best location for it. So that report also has to include what would be the best location for this new behavioral health administration. And full disclosure, that is a Colorado Department of Human Services bill. So that is one of our bills. House Bill 1108, gender identity expression, anti-discrimination. So this bill amends the definition for sexual orientation and adds a definition for term general gender expression and general gender identity, and then makes it those definitions as part of statute that you cannot discriminate against those classes of people, which yeah, another conversation that I think is imperative here to make sure that us as a state is more inclusive in how we function. So House Bill 1119, suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. So this is the Office of Suicide Prevention within the Colorado Department of Human Services. So not the Colorado Department or CDPHE, the health department, that broadens that office to include intervention and postvention services. Yeah, this is another one that OBH doesn't touch, but also might be one of those ones where it's like, okay, this is clearly some behavioral health related programming, and how does that fit into the larger structure of behavioral health services across the board in Colorado. 1130, expand the transition specialist. Full disclosure, this is another CDHS bill, Colorado Department of Human Services bill. So this expands the transition specialist program that gets individuals out of, or helps people transition out of higher levels of care, such as hospitals and withdrawal management facilities, into community-based services. Expands that to include individuals receiving services voluntarily. Currently, voluntary individuals are not allowed into this program, and we see that as a pretty large barrier because we know a lot of folks, even if they go into a, say, an inpatient facility on a hold, they oftentimes will kind of get a little bit better and say, yes, I need to be here and I'll be here voluntarily, but then that voluntary would exclude them from this type of program. So just trying to expand that program without adding additional funds to that program, just so it's it allows more people to access. It also expands who can refer into the program from not just hospitals and withdrawal management facilities, but also crisis stabilization units and acute treatment units, as well as emergency departments. So those standalone EDs that may receive some folks for behavioral health concerns. 1132, local government limited gaming impact. So this is that fund. It's a $100,000 program within OVH to administer grants related to gambling addiction services. So with that, the goal with this bill was to add community mental health clinics and community mental health centers into, or specifically allow those types of facilities to access grant funding for training. It doesn't increase any of what that grant program funding would be. It just adds those two types of facilities into it, the 85% bucket of which is currently being utilized for direct services. Pharmacists prescribed opiate dispense opioid antagonists. So Senate Bill 11 authorizes a pharmacist to prescribe an opioid antagonist and requires pharmacists who dispense an opioid to inform the individuals about potential dangers of an overdose. Bulk purchasing, Senate Bill 122 allows local governments to enter into the bulk purchasing of opioid antagonists. So the state, through the health department, runs a bulk purchasing program. So it allows those medications to be purchased in bulk, which is more better on cost. So it allows local governments to access that bulk purchasing account. Senate Bill 129, Veteran Suicide Prevention Pilot Program. So this is a bill that creates a pilot program specifically in El Paso County to address post 9/11 veterans in helping them access essentially behavioral health services to try to drop the suicide rate for these post 9/11 veterans. It's specific to one county, El Paso County. Yeah, and so that is being currently proposed as an OBH pilot program, and then us contracting with a specific or RFPing, request for proposal, to send it out to have someone administer that program. So this one, Senate Bill 137, the Behavioral Health Recovery Act. So this is, we've talked about this previously. This is that large bill that addresses a bunch of those bills from the Opioid Interim Study Committee from last year, that essentially a lot of that got pulled because of COVID. So this brings in a bunch of behavioral health programming in a single bill. So that's why the summary looks very, very long. I'm not going to go into many of the details here, but one big piece, there is the Senate Bill 1411 last year with those COVID CARES Act funds specific to behavioral health. All of that language is in here. So the same funding, so that was $13 million worth of funding for behavioral health related services from COVID. That is in here as well. So this is a gigantic behavioral health bill. It also includes recovery support housing. It includes guardianship. It includes a lot of stuff. So if you have some time on your hands, definitely take a look at this, because this is one that maybe even next month we can go into these a little bit in more detail. This introduced, I think, earlier this week, so still relatively new to us as well. Senate Bill 146, improve prison release outcomes. So this is within the Department of Corrections. So for individuals or inmates eligible for special needs parole, to ensure that they have access to services that they need to be successful on parole. It's another one of those programs that ensuring that people have access to services that they need, so there isn't so much recidivism, so people can be successful when they are leaving a place and going to essentially a lower level of services. So it's yeah, one of those programs specific to DOC and special needs parole individuals. Senate Bill 154, the 998 Suicide Prevention Lifeline Network. So this is what establishes the 3-digit National Suicide Prevention Lifeline in Colorado. Would essentially be the crisis line, manage the 988 number. So this sets this process in motion in alignment with the passage of the bill in Congress in 2020. Oh, so I guess that's my list so far. Is there anything that I missed? Let me review through the chat as I wasn't paying attention to that. So Laura asking if Senate Bill 137 is likely to pass. Really good question. There's a ton of funding in that. So yeah, I mean, I think we have another revenue forecast coming shortly, or I think in the next couple of weeks. So I think that'll be the first kind of idea about how much money is there to spend, and then that will play into that. And then after.
Hey, Ryan,
Yep.
is OBH supporting it, helping advocate for it, or what's the stance?
We haven't had that determination made yet, since we just got it as a formal bill. Yeah, so with that, our approval needs to run all the way up the chain. So there's a lot of steps that have to happen before the State Department approves it or opposes or supports or opposes any sort of legislation that isn't ours.
Sure, it sounds awesome, but it will cost gazillions of dollars. So if it's not funded, it's not going to do anything.
Yep, so with that, is there any pieces I missed? Anything legislatively folks have been hearing about?
Ryan, do you know if the legislative session is going to end in May as usual, or do they have it extended?
So since they started late, it goes for 120 days. So I think the timing would be middle of June if it were to go to the 120 days, but oftentimes it does end in May. So I think it's how much time they want to put into it, as well as if they're just flat out of money and have passed all these bills and spent all the money, they may just be done with it. But yeah, I haven't really heard any details about what the end date will be, but it'll be May, June-ish, maybe longer if there's another flare up.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, so that's my update. Am I missing anything with this list that everyone should have access to every month? There's also a bunch of different categories that I could put on here. So right now I just essentially have the sponsors, the summary, the status, and the fiscal note. Is there anything else that people would want in this report? Or are we kind of covering the bases here and then kind of have access to what you need to pursue other means yeah. So if you do look for something else, let me know and we can make updates to this report at any time.
Ryan.
I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
But this is Margie. Just real quickly, Ty and another person from the Federation, we did meet with Representative Michelson-Janae on the suicide piece, just to really emphasize the importance of looking at whatever legislation is done, that it is respectful of the needs of families with children. So often things are done for more of an adult population. But I just, so I guess I'm just saying for people, it really is important to have your perspectives and voices heard, and connecting with them and having an opportunity to talk with them one-on-one really is, I think, an important piece for us to do in our advocacy work.
Yeah, Margie, I think you bring up a really good point, is that my experience is that your legislators are really open to having conversations with their constituents. So definitely utilize that. If you have strong opinions about certain bills, definitely talk to your representatives, because yes, they do represent you. So make sure that you're utilizing that. I think Lorraine, you went off mute maybe.
Oh, I just put my comment in the chat. I thought the link was helpful because usually when you're talking about all the bills, I'm trying to take copious notes and they never make any sense afterward.
Looking out for you, Lorraine.
I agree. That was really good. I was reading it as you spoke. Really made a difference.
Good.
This is Ty. I also agree that the notes are very helpful. It'd be nice if there was contact information for, I can find it myself, so it's not necessary, but, you know, like Margie was saying, you know, some of these bills, particularly the identifying document, I would love to get my feedback on. And I think it's important that we, as subject matter experts, really come forward in legislation like that, and legislation that determines housing priorities and assistance to communities, because a lot of times things are done with the best intentions, but without understanding our community, they become harmful.
Yep. Yeah, and we are just kind of at the first part of the legislative session, so there's a lot that goes into it. So definitely be active with where these bills are at moving through the process, and that's maybe one thing that I can add in here related to essentially calendaring where these are at. Is this going to committee at a certain date and whatnot? So maybe I'll look at adding that onto this list as well. So then it's a little bit easier to understand where there's potentially a snag, or where they're just kind of hanging out until they get heard. So
Ryan, this is Karen. I had heard there was possibly a bill coming up regarding 3.7 level of care, specifically the circle programs and funding.
I haven't heard of that, but I will keep it on my radar right here. Do you know potential sponsors or where it could potentially be coming out of?
You know, I'm not sure. I know that Charlie had mentioned the JBC and the legislators talking, I think a week or two ago, and that something was supposed to be going forward this month. So.
Yeah, I'll keep it on my radar. Yeah, I haven't heard anything specific about bills related to 3.7 funding.
Okay, thank you.
But that does bring up another thing. JBC last week, the Joint Budget Committee, so they reversed the changes or the proposed cuts. So like the $11 million cut that OVH put forward related to substance use disorder services, they did not accept that, as well as some other cuts. So, which I think is a good thing for behavioral health as a whole, because I think we are, or it's been perceived or projected that we're in a better spot financially as a state than originally thought. So JVC did not accept those cuts, which I think is a good thing for behavioral health as a whole. But still more to be seen with the long bill. So the state's big budget, once that starts making it through the process, that's really the big step for the budget, and then that's going to be the first thing before, like Senate Bill 137. We need to know what the budget looks like before we can make, or the General Assembly can make big budgeting decisions based on certain bills. So we, I think, potentially have a little bit of time before we know of any major movement on bills with rather large fiscal impacts. But at the same time, things move fast.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So another thing that got brought up with Victoria, the Office of Behavioral Health and Mental Health Colorado are teaming up to have stakeholder conversations related to emergency mental health procedures. So this is specifically talking about the emergency part of 2765, which is the care and treatment of persons with mental health disorders, specifically that emergency involuntary services. So OBH is really leading that discussion on updates to the transportation hold. That 10.5, so that hold that was created in 2017 went into effect in 2018, that essentially allowed someone to be transported from the community to what they call an outpatient mental health facility to have that outpatient facility determine if they meet criteria for a hold. With us, it's been relatively hard to try to get this implemented because there's not a whole ton of statutory language related to that new procedure. So the goal for this is really helping or having that conversation about what is it actually meant, or what is this intervention actually for, this transportation hold, and how can we make it better? So this meeting is the second and fourth Monday of each month. So the next one is on Monday. If you're interested, I can attach you to the invitation, the reoccurring invitations. So beyond the transportation hold, also OBH leading the discussion about who can place a hold. Those intervening professionals is what they're defined. We've had a lot of feedback about how do paramedics and EMTs fit into this conversation. They are currently not ill, they're not on that list, but we want to have that conversation about should they be? Are there other professions that should be on that list? Are there professions that should be taken off the list? We want to have that conversation with a wide range of stakeholders, so everyone has that opportunity to weigh in on this. And with the plan being that in the 2022 session, there would be some legislation brought forth related to updates to 2765-105. OBH is also looking into the training requirements, essentially across the board training requirements for those intervening professionals, as well as facilities, as well as just the general population. Well, what can you expect if you are to be put on a hold, to ensure that people have the rights? Because 2765, that law is about rights protections. It's a pretty invasive procedure if you're going involuntary, or essentially getting forced into treatment. So it's like, how can we ensure that folks get to know what they are getting into and services are consistent across the state as well?
Ryan, I have two questions, and I'd like to be a part of that. My first question is, do you have designated peer representation in that committee? I know a lot of the data and a lot of the information. I know this is different for substance abuse, but for mental health, involuntary commitment, forced treatment, the data and the information just really reflects that it's not effective and it's harmful. And I would highly recommend talking to Ron Bassman, who is, I believe, the CEO of Mind Freedom International, that lives here in Colorado. They advocate and fight to make sure people aren't going in against treatment against their will. And the other part to that is, I know Colorado was a while back, and I dropped the ball, and I don't know where it stands. Changing the involuntary commitment from to have more of a behavioral health that encompasses both substance abuse and mental health, and then change the time frame, which would be against our rights as mental health consumers. More treatment against our wills tend to make the situations worse off for us. So it was a big problem here in Colorado, and a lot of people came out against that, and it dropped. So I want to know kind of where we're at today, because I dropped off the radar.
Yeah, so I think you're talking about back in 2013 is when that first started, about combining the substance use involuntary statutes with the mental health statutes. Yes, that didn't make it, so we still have that there's a substance use involuntary side and there's a mental health involuntary side. So that still exists. We're talking specifically about the mental health side here and specifically that initial emergency procedure aspect of things. There aren't specific seats on this stakeholder process or specific folks identified as you serve this thing and this isn't a voting stakeholder group. It's really to get everyone on at least having a conversation with anyone who wants to participate. We know that there's going to be pretty staunch opposition as well as staunch support for this, but we want to be as inclusive as possible with who has an opportunity to provide feedback. So Ty, I will make sure that you are on that list as well. And Victoria, I see that you are requesting that. So anyone else? Yeah, and Margie. Yes, so but sorry, did I?
This is Carrie. Sorry, I'd like to be get notice of that as well. I think it's helpful to understand that we're not necessarily, when we have to write a mental health hold for a 72-hour hold, we're not necessarily forcing someone into a long-term treatment. What we're doing is that we found they are an imminent risk to themselves for either suicide or to harm someone else, or that they are so gravely disabled that we cannot leave them in place. They don't have anybody to care for them, that we have to take them from their home and put them in the hospital or a psych hospital if at all possible, and skip that emergency room because that's not really the place for them. So that they can get the care they need and potentially stabilize in 72 hours so that they can make their own decisions about where they go to next.
Yep, Carrie, really good point. And kind of going back to the conversation we had about expanding the transition specialist program, I'm talking about those folks that, yeah, maybe they originally came in on a transportation hold or a 72-hour hold, but they have found that, yes, I need services, and how can we make sure that they have access to those services on a voluntary basis? It really, in Colorado, it's designed to be the least restrictive. Involuntary services are always going to be more restrictive than voluntary services. So we need to make sure that, back to the training component of this, is make sure that our providers are well versed in what all this stuff means, as well as individuals and families are well versed in what different procedures mean and the rights that they do have.
Ryan, this is Margie. Just a quick question. Is there anywhere that is capturing when people are brought in and they require services and the capacity just does not meet the need? Either there is not a place or we just do not have the service available to them, say in a rural community, or I think this goes with our equity question. In this process, is there a place where we are capturing that piece? And where does that information go? Because I think it's, as Bob talked about earlier, being a safety net. Is that who is the safety net, or who is looking at what's in the net that we need to be addressing? Because I think, again, this goes back with my thought of Rachel. How are we getting that information to the behavioral health task force people so that people really are linking or matching these true needs with what they are looking at to implement?
Yeah, Margie, I think you bring up a fantastic point, and I don't think there is that clear data that we have about like what are true safety net services. I think Senate Bill 19-222 starts that conversation related to if you're a high intensity behavioral health provider, what does that mean? And there needs to be better funding for folks that, or for those providers that are providing that community-based high intensity services. I mean, there's a gigantic funding piece related to this. And I think that's where Senate Bill 222, the Behavioral Health Administration, Bhpac, all of this stuff kind of starts merging together. So talking about this is really that opportunity for behavioral health right now, because it is in the light. It is in okay, people are interested in this. We have identified that there potentially are some deficiencies in how services are being provided. So how can we address those things? And I mean, I think that's where excitement for me lies, is because this is our opportunity, and we just need to be able to take that and yeah, create that ideal state. And what that ideal state looks like is still to be determined. But I think there's a lot of change that needs to happen between now and then. And yeah, which isn't a fantastic answer, because that feels like a, oh, wait and see. But we also, it's not a wait and see for us, because we do have a voice, and we should use that voice. So with that was my soapbox for the BHA and 222. So
I guess it just seems like if we can take this opportunity, if we're going back to what those recommendations were that we think people should be doing, this is an important piece, is how do you not lose those highest need, highest risk situations and people?
Yep. Yeah, because all of these conversations, they merge together, right? So if we're talking about providers, and if I just do this one thing and I do this one thing really well, how does that fit into the provider system as a whole? Is there not providers or is there not services for certain folks in certain communities? How does it look like across equity and diversity lens? Is it, I mean, how does criminal justice fit into this whole conversation as well? So, I mean, there's a lot of pieces. I mean, even going back to how law enforcement interacts with folks in the community, making sure that they're going to continue to do that they're trained and know exactly what they should be doing in a situation like this, and really bringing folks to the places that they need to go to get the services, and not just directly to jail. Because that still is the largest treatment provider, is the criminal justice system. So yeah, so there's a lot of work to do, but that also with that, it also provides a lot of opportunity. Kind of last 15 minutes here, OBH rulemaking process. So the addiction counselor rules, our OBH piece to that, they were adopted on February 5th, and they will be going into effect April 1st, barring any major issues. So that essentially just redefined OBH's role in this program, which is the coursework requirements, how you complete the coursework, how you receive the clinical hours, and then establishing a continuing competency program for the new CAT and CAS credential, addiction specialist and addiction technician credential. We're also working on 12-year-old psychotherapy consent rules, essentially providing an exception to our current rule requirement that youth consent only happens after the age of 15 without parental or guardian consent. There is one protection related to certain mental health professionals that are allowed to provide outpatient psychotherapy services to youth starting at age 12 without parental or guardian consent. So we just need to make sure that our rules clearly align with provisions of law. So we're working on those. We should have a draft, or we do have a draft. The whole process of when it goes to state board is still up in the air. Working on DUI 2765 rules, how we designate 2765 facilities, our general licensing and designation for the substance use disorder services, so the approval of behavioral health or for mental health programs. We're also looking at updating those rules, as well as updating crisis system rules, and partially determining what our role for our regulatory role within the crisis system is, because that's a contracted and funded service through OBH. So statute, rule, contracts, make sure that they all align. And then the last piece, really no new updates on the expansion to the 2 block grants. Same as last time, is that we are expecting that we will get a one-time advance or in a one-time addition or expansion to the block grants. We don't know any more details than we knew last month. With that, we are still looking for recommendations from Bhpac about how we could utilize those one-time expansion dollars. So be thinking about those things. I can't reiterate enough that it is potentially one-time funding. So it doesn't mean that the block grants will be essentially doubled going forward. We're assuming that this is a one-time deal. So like I said, there's no new information yet. We haven't received any information. So as soon as we receive anything, I will let this group know, because yes, it is your federal duty to advise us on how we utilize those block grant funds. So we will look for you all to provide us with those recommendations. Other OBH staff, did I miss anything, or did I miss anything? What did I miss?
I don't think you missed anything. I think you got everything.
Yeah, I can't think of anything either.
Yeah, so with that, thanks for the discussion this morning, or earlier today, or I guess it still is morning. I think it's a very important conversation that we need to keep on our active radar every single month related to that equity, cultural competency, authenticity, the EDI work, and kind of across the board with everything that we do with Bhpac, and making sure that we are actively representing everyone across the state, because really that is our task and duty of Bhpac is statewide representation to fill those gaps with block grant funds. We, I think, need to better identify what those gaps are, which, yeah, I think we are definitely willing and vested in working with Bhpac to provide you with whatever information that we can, and making sure that it doesn't feel like we are just feeding you the information that we want you to have as well, which definitely I'll take that back from today is, yep, we need to have a better partnership and make sure that you guys are the leaders of this conversation as well. So with that, I don't have anything else, so I'll kick it back to you, Julie.
All right. We finished early then, basically, is the moral of the story. The only other thing I have to add is that we did send out a survey to you guys, because we really, 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 really want to hear your voice about how you feel this last year and the process of working together has been. And it is completely anonymous. We are not tracking you. We don't want to know who said what. We just want to hear from you. So please take the time to do the survey. It's very short. I believe it's 5 questions. And we really want to get your feedback. I think we've had 13 responses, and we'd love to have 100% if possible, but certainly more than that. So please take the time to do that, because that will be valuable to us, but also to give to your new leadership moving forward, so that it can implement the thoughts that you have on the process. So please take the time to do that. We greatly appreciate it. And we will plan next month to go over again that sheet that you guys have that has the 10 recommendations from everything you said. And we will work really hard next month to get that taken care of. So thank you again. You guys take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next month.
Julie.
Yeah.
Will we be able to look at the results of the survey of ourselves?
Yeah, we don't see why we can't send that out. Once we compile it all, we're happy to.
Yeah, I think that would help me make improvements or suggest improvements.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. I'll talk to Donda about compiling that information.
Okay, now I'm waving goodbye.
Okay.